This is Ffrith in North Wales. It's a small village of about 400 people with a main street, about 3 other streets, no shops and 2 pubs. So they've got their priorities right here. Anyway, back in the 1960s, in the back garden of this house and a few other houses down the street, some local archaeologists dug some trenches. Underneath that concrete and under that glass house, they discovered a series of walls and some bits of pot and tile and some Roman coins, and they thought they'd got a Roman bathhouse. But is it? And if so, what's it doing here? Time Team have got just 3 days to find out. Ffrith is here in North Wales, just across the border from Chester, the centre of Roman occupation in the northwest. But the reason that the local archaeologists want us to dig here is because they think this is really special and it's never been properly excavated. Harry, have you any idea how important your garden actually is?
No idea at all. I just believe there's some Roman walls underneath and that's about it, really.
What have we got?
Well, we've got a collection, as Harry says, of Roman walls. So excavations carried out here in the 60s, and we found various plans which show possibly some rectangular buildings, possibly a circular building, possibly a building with an apse on it, a semicircular projection on one side. But the fact of the matter is, we don't really know what the building is.
What's that look like to you, Mick?
Well, it's been suggested it's a bathhouse, but I think the problem is all the plans are different. And really, if we're going to understand it, we ought to re-excavate it and see what it looks like in the ground.
There you go.
We're beginning to dismantle Harry's garden. It's taking a bit of time because of the path and the stuff around it. Next door, Phil's moving a bit faster. He just had grass to go through.
Oh!
The fence between the 2 gardens just has to go. It'll be easier to work without it. The village itself runs north-south, and the main street follows the line of Offa's Dyke. The dyke, built in the 8th century, is now under these houses. Behind them is the village playing field. It was scheduled as an ancient monument because Roman material was found along the edges. The authorities have given us permission to have a look at it.
Well, look, these thicker dots are presumably where they've got higher readings. It's resistance survey,
Right.
so that could be stone buildings.
It's pouring down now, so the incident room is suddenly very busy.
Yeah, well, it's the problem when you're actually outside.
Stuart and Henry are looking at the overall topography.
So this is a 3D map of the area.
Victor, Raysan and Sally, a Roman baths expert, are looking at what a bathhouse might have looked like.
Example we found, which is Ashted. It's got the most similar layout, although it's half the size.
And John has now got some geophys results for the playing field.
These are the results from 20 years ago. That's our area we've surveyed. Now, if you compare the 2, take their results. It's a perfect match.
Very, very similar, aren't they?
I mean, it really is good.
Yes.
Because from what we know, in the 60s, they stopped here.
Right.
That over there is brand spanking new virgin ground, never been dug before. And that will answer the question of all this rubble. It will give us a continuation of the wall. It will also give us the inside of the building, and also it will give us a brand spanking new set of finds.
This is the wall Phil's found. In the 60s, another wall was found in this corner. Phil's new trench will provide the missing link between the 2. If this lines up, we'll either have a circular building or one with an apse, a semicircular projection on one side. Any finds associated with it will give us a date for this wall. At the moment, we've no way of even knowing whether it's Roman or not. So, OK, the Roman army might have been here, but why here?
There are a number of possibilities. First of all, Ffrith is actually on the line of the main Roman road, which runs from the legionary fortress at Chester over there, down through the centre and up through this valley, on into central Wales and eventually the west coast. So,
out in the playing field, Helen's opened a very large trench, but has very little to show for it.
We were thinking, were we coming down onto something structural or not?
Looks horribly natural.
Yeah,
It looks like something you might quarry out to build a road.
Well, exactly.
But we did have a bit of luck with some Roman finds.
Yeah.
Well, from here.
Yeah, from the top layers.
That's a star one.
That's your star piece of Roman.
But this was from very much higher up. This is from the more like the ridge and furrow.
See, I'd have thought that was probably a flower pot.
And here we are, a nice piece of Opus Signinum. Quite a big bit, really.
Right.
You can see all the flecks in it.
Yeah. That's looking like proper archaeology now.
Yeah, I think we've got undisturbed Roman wall there and undisturbed Roman floors at the bottom there.
Yeah, undisturbed Roman, but it's undisturbed Roman only since the mid-1960s when they dug it up last time.
Yeah, okay.
Don't you think this line of stones here is very similar to what you've got in there? It's probably the same line.
Ooh.
In other words, whatever that wall is, it's not going anywhere else, but it's coming down here.
It does line up, does it?
Well, we need to get Henry in, don't we, to ask him to look at it. Look, if you stand here, look, you can see the shed.
Hey?
If you stand over here, you can see the corner of the shed, look. So it must be going under this garage, mustn't it? Come out under the fence.
If he's right, it's not a bathhouse, it's a wall at least 15 metres long.
And it looks more like, again, like as if it's a field wall, doesn't it?
Who done it?
That's sort of here before the houses are put here.
Don't curve either, does it?
No, it doesn't.
We open up the wall that Mick tripped over. It does seem to line up with Phil's and is on the same height. In the extension to Phil's trench, he's found the wall, but he's also found this ditch. Inside the ditch, we're coming across a range of good finds, and they're all Roman.
Look at that, you see the little projection on the side?
Yes.
And then the thinness of the glass, and also, I think you can make out some little air bubbles in it, very characteristic of Roman glass. What else? And the star exhibit, a Roman brooch. Oh yes, that's P-shaped, a P-shaped brooch. There should be another one of these on this side. So there's a gap down the middle. They join at the bottom for the tail here. But it is an unusual type of brooch, and I think it probably belongs to the late 2nd century and on into the 3rd. Okay.
These finds give us some relief, but they date the ditch in Phil's trench. The wall is still a mystery.
I'm absolutely happy in my own mind that that's Roman. I don't know quite...
The ditch is Roman, but how can he get a date for the wall? Digging here might give us a point where this wall and this ditch cross. That way, we'll be able to tell if the wall's Roman or if it comes after the Roman period.
What we've got is this sort of rectilinear arrangement.
Right.
Yeah?
Yeah.
There's reported Roman finds just over the road there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's such a positive result. I think we ought to
Pop a hole in and have a look.
Which is what we do. And pretty soon, there's quite a crowd around having a look.
I'd say you've got a good one there.
Looks like a mortar floor.
It does, doesn't it? It's nice and thick, isn't it?
And look, I was going to say that when I dug down in that hole there, it's still carrying on down. But
and this is a wall.
God.
Harry? Tracy, if anybody deserves a drink, it's you two after what we've done to your garden. Wait, have you seen this? This is our star find so far. It's a dice, like a Snakes and Ladders dice, that has not been thrown for 1,800 years. Mind you, if we'd been chucking it, given our luck over the last couple of days, what would we have got? Ones and twos?
Oh, come on, Tony. At least 2s and 3s, I would have thought, you know.
3 days ago, this was our starting point. A map of stone walls joined together by archaeologists and historians in a way that suggested a very big bath complex in this area. We now know that they were wrong. Most of these walls weren't even Roman, except for this one. But then, just when we thought that was it... Bridge, things starting to come together in your trench?
Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. Look, we've got a Roman ditch coming up here.
Yeah.
Just uncover what looks like a Roman post hole, and the piece de resistance is this piece of daub.
Daub as in wattle and daub?
Yeah.
So where would the wattle have gone?
2 pieces would have fitted just in there.
It is extraordinary how things always start to come together towards the end of day 3. And it being day 3, we've got, as usual, 3/4 of the local population. But what's so strange is that in addition to all the things that we've got in Bridget's Trench, in Matt's Trench, we've got something similar. What have you got for us?
Well, we're down on the bottom clay floor here, and if you look really carefully, you can see these circular, evenly spaced stains, and that's where wooden stakes would have been, and they'd have held up a small wall, a partition wall or something like that.
So there is Roman here. It's just much more ephemeral than we thought it would be. It's wattle and daub and mud and post holes. It's not made of stone.
Oh, well, I mean, I'm over the moon. I mean, we came looking for a bathhouse, and it's always nice to be able to put the record straight. We now know that there is no bathhouse. And then to cap it all, we've been able to confirm some of their results, which was this wonderful stone-built wing of a Roman building, tessellated floor, lovely floors. It's been, yeah, it's stonker, it really has.
What a great optimist you are.
I am!
What is it that we've got?
What we've got is a whole complex of buildings here. Quite what it is more difficult to interpret because it's clearly not a Roman villa, and neither is it something like a Roman fort. Well, Stuart came up with the idea that this is actually the nearest supply of limestone to Chester. And why that's important is you need vast amounts of limestone to make lime for the mortar and the plaster and everything when you're building the permanent fort there. And you'd need a gang of labourers basically to do that. So we probably ought to think of this as some sort of industrial military compound of people who are producing all that material to send back over to Chester, and I quite like that idea.
It's wonderful having a quiet little conversation at the end of the day with just the 5 of us and 350 local people. Go away!
Time Team is 100% independent and funded by our incredible fans. Joining Patreon gives you access to exclusive interviews, 3D models, masterclasses and more. Please join us on this exciting journey. We need more support to make more episodes.
In 43 AD, the Romans invaded Britain with their shining armour and their Mediterranean suntans and their imperial army, but they were deeply resented by the Iron Age Brits, and it was centuries before the country was well and truly Romanised. At least, that's the story we know and love. But here, in an idyllic part of Somerset, is a site that tells a very different story. The local Archaeological Society have uncovered a villa built within decades of the Roman invasion. What's more, it seems to have been occupied by Brits. So were the locals as hostile as we think? What was going on here? Can we sort out the strange story of Blacklands? We've only got a limited amount of time, just 3 days. Just years after their arrival, the Romans had constructed Bath in the southwest, a major Roman centre of grand stone buildings. The defeated Brits, meanwhile, were living in wooden roundhouses and sticking with their tribal culture. Or were they? The society believe the villa looks like this, and early finds suggest it dates to the 1st century AD. They also believe that the villa complex was built by Britons already living at Blacklands at the time of conquest, Britons who were quick to adopt Roman ways. But are they right? Can this site point us to the day the Romans arrived? We're facing some soggy work down a hole that may hide key evidence to understanding the site. Bridge? Is that a well?
It is.
Why are we digging a well? I mean, a hole's just a hole, isn't it?
Well, it is. This is quite a significant one because this is meant to be dated to the very, very early Roman period, about the 1st century AD. And it's significantly over top of a late Iron Age ditch. And of course, at the bottom of a well, you get lots of finds, and we just want to see what those finds are and get some more dating evidence, that kind of thing.
Kerry, you're our health and safety bloke. How are we going to dig that without killing ourselves?
What we're going to do, we're going to put a machine slot in front of the well, get down as far as we can safely, and then we're going to board it and shore it so we can work from the outside of the well, and we'll half section it as we go.
As we prepare for the next storm, Matt gets stuck into the villa trench.
I guess this probably came from the villa, do you reckon?
I would have thought so, yeah. It seems like the explanation that we've got the demolition dump in the top of the villa, so it'd be interesting to see what date that is.
Our own geophys results are also giving us plenty to get our teeth into.
Pretty good.
Helen opens her trench where the geophys results show a mysterious crossing of ditches that may hold finds. Within minutes, a new find emerges.
Stone tile. It's got that reddish kind of purpley look, isn't it?
It's got a point to it.
Yeah, I think it's worth
That could be a roof tile.
worth asking, because if it is a roof tile, isn't that the first one? Yeah.
When the Romans arrived, southwest Britain was divided up into tribes such as the Doboni. While there were Brits who were hostile to Roman imperial expansion, others, particularly those who were already trading with Rome, were more welcoming and more likely to build a Romanized building. You've got this Iron Age landscape, and suddenly plonked into the middle of it, you get this super modern villa. How did they know what to build? Where did they get the ideas and the craftsmen from?
Well, you've got a lot of things happening very close to here. Go 10 miles to the north and you've got the Roman town of Bath. Now, this is somewhere where huge investment is taking place in the 60s and 70s. There are probably masons coming across from Gaul, probably Roman engineers, building this massive monumental temple and everything that goes with it.
I think what John says is correct, but I think you've also got to accept that there are people here in the late Iron Age who are probably already important, already perhaps high status. And what they're doing, and that's before the conquest, and after the conquest, what they do is develop a Roman villa, perhaps referring to sites in southeastern England, to show off their allegiance to the new authority, perhaps, and their links to the southeast of England and their knowledge of building structures.
So what would the people around here have felt who couldn't afford this lovely, swanky new Roman villa?
I think intimidated to start with. It's like thinking about medieval cathedrals, sort of peasant going and suddenly seeing this huge spiring tower. They'd be in awe of it. And that's what they feel when they go to see Bath. OK, a small little villa like this is not quite the same, but it's very alien architecture.
Yeah, most people in the region at the time are still living in roundhouses, so somebody who builds a villa like this is showing off their links to the new political authority.
Or it could be seen as a huge faux pas, like someone putting up stone cladding on their building.
I'll go with that. On the villa site, Matt's been having trouble finding a definite date for the villa's construction. Demolition rubble's been dated to the 2nd century, so it's definitely a very early villa. But it could have been built as much as 50 years after the Romans arrived. So were there people living here at the time of conquest? We're adding to the pottery finds that paint an unexpected picture.
So what sort of date range of Roman material have we got here, Mark?
Well, we've just got a small selection here, and we're really starting with the later part of the 1st century AD.
Right.
And the 2nd century AD. But we've also got some late Roman, some 4th century AD, but it's predominantly late 1st and 2nd century. But we've got a bit of a gap with the earliest Roman pottery. We have not yet been able to recognise any pottery that dates from the period of the Roman conquest through to about AD 75 or thereabouts.
So that's about 30 years missing at the beginning of the Roman period.
Right, that's right. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Does that indicate that there are gaps in the sort of buildings and occupation on the site then?
Well, it's looking increasingly to me from the pottery that we ought to have another building somewhere.
Right. Well, that's a bit of a conundrum, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, you're presumably not thinking of a villa-type structure at all, are you?
No, I wouldn't expect a villa at that date. You're probably thinking about a timber building, a farmstead. It could conceivably still be a roundhouse at this phase and just making the transition to a more rectilinear Romanised timber building.
Right. Well, we'd better have a look at the geophysics and everything else, hadn't we? And see where that might be.
Yeah.
If we find a missing building, it may reveal Romanisation, no longer wooden and round, but rectangular or stone-built. Then in Helen's Trench, we find hints of just such a structure. Helen put a trench in here because she thought there might be a big ditch here, and sure enough, you can see that against the clay there, but it's this side of the trench that you started getting really excited about.
Yeah, look, we seem to have found a wall. It's got these great big stones in it, and the finds that are coming off are interesting. We've got a piece of Samian ware, and a lovely rim of black burnished ware. Good Roman stuff, but then we've also got a piece of clay pigeon, so we're really not sure what the date might be yet.
I mean, the thing is, we didn't know it was here because we'd only done a magnetic survey. We got the ditched enclosure, but we didn't see this wall. I mean, if this is a building, then it puts a whole different perspective on it.
Where is the ditched enclosure?
Well, you say ditched enclosure, but hang on. I'm standing on the corner. It's 30 metres long that way, it's 10 metres long that way. Could it actually be a huge, great big timber building, this enclosure? And if that's possible, could that stone wall be the replacement in stone? So we could maybe have a sequence.
How do we find out?
Well, we're just about ready to extend the trench and we're going to go exactly that way where you are, so I think you better move.
But the West Country weather is proving a challenge. In past excavations, the local society have uncovered what seems to be a major gatehouse designed for the villa. The two supporting towers had massive footings, and they're bothering Stuart.
I mean, what's real unusual about that gatehouse is the scale. I mean, that's a substantial building of that scale at 6 metres by 3 metres for each tower. Something of that order you'd expect either on a fort or a big villa. It seems totally out of context in relationship to that very small building, doesn't it?
It seems half the size of the actual villa, which it must dwarf it, really, in respect.
That would make it really unique and unusual. And it puzzles me why I'd have something so big with that. I think it just needs a little bit more work to see if we can get to the bottom of what this structure really is.
But at least we've already solved one mystery. Yesterday in this trench we'd planned a major excavation. It looked like there was going to be a 20 or 30 foot deep well in here, didn't it? There?
It did.
And you were going to shore it up around the outside.
I was.
Going to half section it.
I was.
Make sure that none of us were hurt because you're our health and safety man.
I was, yes.
Look what we've ended up with.
Yep.
It's pathetic.
It is pathetic. And what's happened is they've taken out their backfill from the last time they excavated here, and it bottomed after about 3 inches.
3 inches. I can't tell you how excited he was about this. How long have you been planning it?
For weeks, and I've had generators, scaffolding, acros, everything in for this.
And this is what we've ended up with?
It is. But my primary concern is my tent, which is in that hedge over there.
What are you on in terms of light?
Yesterday, Phil's trench gave us a worked Iron Age antler. He's now convinced he's digging within an Iron Age roundhouse. But could his Iron Age site be much bigger and run into our second field below? What's the news then? Have we got our village?
I could not have been more wrong about this, Tony, what I said this morning. I had this vision in my mind that this would be full of roundhouses, and it's absolutely fantastic, but it's nothing like what I predicted at all.
What have we got instead?
I mean, we've got a massive ditch continuing round. I mean, it circles round for 40 metres. It seems to be a really large enclosure.
So that means that before the Romans came, there was this huge, presumably one building with this enclosure inside?
I think that's what we don't know, because, I mean, you know, we assume this is Iron Age going with this, but actually we don't know that, do we? We need to look at it.
No, we've got to dig this, really.
Yeah.
But what we really need to do is get some dating evidence from this field, and we think go for this entrance.
It's very exciting, isn't it?
It is, yeah, yeah.
So Matt opens a trench in the second field inside a ditched enclosure. If it is Iron Age, it would have been built to enclose the Iron Aged roundhouse in Phil's tent. Phil! Phil!
Tony!
I've got Mark for you. Where he comes up trumps.
Come on then, let's see this.
I'm all of a quiver, I really am. I know what I found, but I don't know what the detail is. I've never found anything like this before.
Oh my word, it's an Iron Age coin.
I know, that's what, but give me detail.
Right, well, it certainly belongs to the group that we call Dubunic, or Southwestern British. You've got a lovely head there with see the nose, chin, eyes and hair. And there should be a horse on the other side.
There is.
And there's the horse with the triple tail.
So this is before the Romans have arrived?
Yeah, almost up to a century before the Romans arrived.
I didn't realise they were making coins then.
Yes, coinage appears in Britain towards the very beginning of the 1st century BC or the end of the 2nd century BC and reaches this area by about 60, 70 BC.
What would that horse signify?
Well, the horse is a very common symbol on Iron Age coins, and it may be a symbol of luck and also perhaps power and authority.
So, Phil, what does this coin tell us about what was happening in your trench?
I mean, presumably it's a high status object.
Well, these things don't turn up on every Iron Age site.
I've just never found anything like that before. I've seen pictures of them. But we've got to also place in our mind that we do have this big roundhouse, this 15-metre diameter roundhouse. Now, that is a high-status building. And I think, you know, the high-status building is going to go with a man of power. It's the sort of guy who would have that coin.
Yeah, quite possibly.
So you're mildly pleased to have found
I
this?
am just over the moon. I'm literally all of a quiver. I just can't believe it.
Brilliant. The most fun that Phil could have without a stone tool in his hands. The first Iron Age coin ever excavated on Time Team. And it begins a flood of finds from all over the site.
I don't think we've had window glass.
No, Jane said we hadn't found any on the site before.
Yeah, what a lovely colour. The technique in making it is to blow a great big bubble and then snip it down the middle and open it out flat. It is a beautiful thing.
We've gone down into another layer, a lower layer in the pit here, and we're coming up with these really lovely fine weirs. And I just would like your opinion on their date.
Yeah, we'll start with the Samian, because it's always the easiest. That's South Gaulish from southern France.
Yeah.
And I think that's from a sort of shallow plate or platter known as a Form 18. But it's a type that probably dates, I don't know, you're probably looking at the last 30 years of the 1st century AD, which is interesting.
Oh, great.
Bridges finds are just some 40 years from the time of conquest, but we still lack evidence of occupation from the actual transition point from the Iron Age to the Roman period.
Lovely.
There's the...
Let's keep it on the trail, actually, until we can get it in the tray. Oh, lovely.
Now, what are you looking for?
I'm just, first of all, just looking at the profile. It's the first chance to get it. It is a classic sort of mid-1st century AD cordon jar profile. I think this is probably going to belong to somewhere towards the middle of the 1st century AD. It is, in fact, right on that transition.
Say that date again?
The middle of the 1st century AD.
Middle of the 1st century.
Yeah.
So, in other words...
Just either side of the conquest
I was going to
period.
say, that's sort of 50 AD, which is about the time of the conquest.
Right.
At last, we've got firm evidence of people living somewhere around here at the time of the Roman conquest. A pot imported from the Roman Empire for wealthy Britons. Of course, it doesn't give us the exact location of the conquest period building, but it's a big step. Back in the second field, Matt's at the bottom of what we think is the entrance to a huge enclosure located by Geophys.
So how are you getting on with this ditch then, Matt?
Well, I think I've just about got to the bottom of it now, finally. It's a little deeper than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it's enormous, isn't it?
Yeah, and at the bottom, it's kind of claggy clay deposit with bits of charcoal, and I found one bit of pot out of it. I just want you to have a look at it.
Oh, that looks good. Well, that's definitely late Iron Age. That's excellent. So that confirms that the ditch was dug in the late Iron Age then and backfilled in the Roman period.
Yeah,
excellent.
Because all that was Roman down to about there.
Yeah, but
Right.
the initial digging is late Iron Age. Brilliant.
Let's get the rest of it out, see if we can find you some more.
Great.
So Matt's ditch is a massive Iron Age enclosure around Phil's and Bridges' trench. The pottery has shown that the living area at the time of conquest is also within this enclosure. From the geophys and huge curve of her trench, Bridge suspects her rubbish pit may cover another roundhouse, and she's found a fixture. And what's that thing there?
Well, this is really neat. This looks like it's a pivot stone from a door. So you'd have had the frame coming out of here and the door pivoting back and forth like that.
Yeah, look at that.
Right. There we go.
Yeah, all right.
That's very nice. Got that triangular shape there. And look, you can see the groove mark in the side there, where the pivot of the door frame would have come up there. You can see where it's been wearing away.
So it's quite a sophisticated building. What might it have been?
Well, potentially we have a stone-built roundhouse, possibly built after the Roman conquest by people using Roman pottery.
So if we've got a Romanised roundhouse, that's a completely different part of the story, isn't it?
It is, but we knew we were lacking a building at that period because we've got the pottery, we haven't got a structure to go with it. It looks as if Bridge might have found it, and the reason we haven't found it before is it's been demolished.
So is it that when the Romans arrived here, the high-status locals didn't just go, oh, well, we better move into a classic Roman house. They just used some Roman technology, incorporated it into their own roundhouses and only built a Romanised house later?
Yeah, they continue sometimes to live into roundhouses until they build the villa, perhaps.
Bridget, this could be the missing link.
It could be, but I'm going to go down and find that for you.
With just a few hours to go, Helen's rectangular feature has given way to another structure entirely, one of stone and so Romanised.
This is looking a lot better, isn't it, Helen? Looks like a proper excavation here.
It certainly does. It's looking absolutely gorgeous. But we've still got a few problems.
Like?
Well, everybody agrees that this is an Iron Age roundhouse.
What, this sort of area in the middle?
Yeah,
Yeah.
With these stones coming round in an arc.
Yeah.
And it's got eave strip, gully thing and all the things that you'd expect from an Iron Age roundhouse.
Yeah.
Except it's only got one solitary single piece of Iron Age pottery.
Right.
So there is a possibility that it could actually be a Roman roundhouse. So we've got Matt digging a trench across the wall to try to find out, and Tom is working away at a post hole, which could also be associated, to try to find something that's earlier.
So what about this wall then?
Well, the wall is a real enigma because it did seem to turn at that end, we're pretty certain, and then peter out.
Right.
But then at this end, it just kind of gets a bit lumpy and stops. It just seems to be a wall in the middle of nowhere, and that's really odd.
It doesn't relate to a building as far as we can see at all then, does it?
No, absolutely not.
Right.
As she runs out of time, Helen's Roman walls remain a mystery. She thinks she's got a Romanised roundhouse, but the date remains elusive. Bridge, though, has found an even more impressive building.
Hi, Bridge, what's what on earth is that?
Are you impressed? I mean, it looks as though we've got massive foundations.
God, it does, doesn't it? I mean, that's clearly been carefully laid. And...
Yeah, and look, we've got a construction cut
Yeah,
running around
I
that
see
side,
that.
and it's curving up in that direction through
Yeah.
there.
That's
Then we've got good levels on all of these.
Yeah, and this pit's cut through the top of it.
Yeah, and actually what's really nice about it is you can see where they've actually put the pit in. They've been digging away, and then gone bang against these and realised, oh, below that, why move them out the way and just win over the top?
Yes, it looks like a massive footing.
Yeah.
Have you had any material from around it or within it?
All of this here in front of you
Oh,
is from
right.
around this foundation.
Let's have a look. You've got some decorated salient. Well, that looks to me as if that ought to date to about 60 to 80 AD.
That's good. That's earlier than what we were having
Yeah,
before.
it is. And, I mean, looking at this looks like good sort of late Iron Age bead rim, but it's also appearing with the sort of earliest Romanised forms as well. So we're definitely looking, I think, at that period of about 60 to 80.
So this really is filling the gap in time that we've had for structures and occupation on the site.
It is indeed.
Can you imagine what the size of this building must have been like?
It's truly astonishing and unusual in any context in Roman Britain, I'd say, to see foundations on this scale in the countryside this early.
In the last minutes of the day, Bridge has revealed what we've been looking for. A stone roundhouse, a Romanised building constructed by Brits within a few decades of the Romans' arrival. Over the last 3 days, you've got more and more excited about this site, haven't you?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I think it's been a fantastic site.
Why?
Well, it's that junction between prehistory and the Roman period, and, we're right on it here. I think we're right on it, more or less, where we're standing, actually.
In the 3 days, we've found the site where Romanisation first took hold at Blacklands. We've uncovered 3 roundhouses, and while Helen's remains undated, the heart of the story is in Phil's high-status Iron Age one and Bridge's massive stone one from those critical years after the Romans arrived. And our finds paint a picture of the people at Blacklands who adopted Roman ways so quickly. Pottery, revealing trade with the continent, rare coins belonging to the powerful and wealthy. pretty good few days.
Absolutely.
This site promised so much and it delivered even more. Not only did we extend the Roman life of this place by about 200 years, not only did we get right into the heart of an Iron Age roundhouse, but we got very close to the people who were living here at that extraordinary moment in time when the Romans arrived here in Somerset.
Time Team is 100% independent and funded by our incredible fans. Want us to make more episodes? Joining Patreon gives you access to exclusive interviews, 3D models, masterclasses and more. And you get to have your say in the process as we develop new sites.
This is Withington in the Cotswolds, an area of outstanding beauty with a lot of rich farmland and some very classy houses. In Roman times it seems to have been pretty much the same, because 200 years ago ploughmen somewhere around here discovered a huge villa. Excavations revealed some exquisite mosaics, but no one was able to date the villa and there's no record of exactly where it was. But that's just the beginning of our story. 200 metres below the villa field is this lovely little spring, and guess what? Roman mosaic and Roman tile have been found here and in this field over here. No one's dug here, but the two sites are too close together not to be connected. Could the big villa over there have had a huge complex of buildings down here?
I think it could, but I'm more interested actually in the spring which is under the bush over there. This is called Withington by the Wall Well, which rather suggests it was, perhaps named in the Saxon period. And we know that Romans, when they come in, they often take over pre-existing sites like springs, which are religious interest, and put temples and turn them into their own religious sites.
Temple?
Well, maybe, but this is a very unusual location. It's very wet down here. There's a lot of water about. It's going to flood. I think it's much more likely that the main villa is further up the slope, but perhaps this is the predecessor, the early villa, which was then replaced by the later villa further up the slope.
David, what about these bits of mosaic? Do they give us a clue?
Well, these could belong to an early villa, but I think it's more likely a bathhouse. So we could have an elaborate bathhouse associated with a villa, either down here or up there, and perhaps we could have a swimming pool associated with an early villa.
The important thing which I keep going back to is what is the relationship between what is happening down here and the really big villa up there?
All right, if you were all gambling men, which I know that none of you are, what are you going to say this is?
Temple.
I'd like a temple. Early villa.
Villa. 2 all.
Early villa and bathhouse.
Bathhouse,
With a swimming pool,
villa,
perhaps.
temple, swimming pool. We're not going to know till we start digging, are we? Get going, Phil! No sooner has Phil got the turf off than mosaic pieces start appearing.
Got our first one, look.
Ah,
Matt.
nice.
Tessera.
Just out the topsoil.
Yeah, what doesn't matter. It proves Roger wouldn't plant in them. Oh look, there's another one.
Popping out all over the place.
Yeah.
The villa was excavated by an eminent antiquarian called Samuel Lysons, and that's the problem really, because he seems to be more interested in chasing mosaics than he was in working out the extent of the villa. So our first job's going to have to be to find it. But John, we've got these zonking great pylons here, aren't they going to get in your way?
It shouldn't be too much of a problem. These instruments are designed to filter out that sort of noise.
There are so many tesserae, or pieces of mosaic, coming out in the lower field that Phil's put the machine away to avoid any damage to the archaeology.
In front of your spade, that one.
Yeah, another one there, nice one. That's loads, you found loads, and all I've done is topsoil from there to there. Found about 10.
But what we want is to get them in a floor, man. That's what we want.
We've barely been going 5 hours. Phil says he's found something to bring me out in goose pimples. What you got?
Oh, look.
This is what we got. We got a mosaic. Look, there it is. Isn't that absolutely incredible? And look, it goes right the way across there. It's still going there. Look, it's still going. Look, there it goes, and you can see. So, there it is.
Let's have a go, so we can find it.
Go on.
On the other end of the tree.
See, there it is.
Blimey, O'Reilly. It's still here.
2 square metres already.
Wow.
I know. And of course it's going back in through there. And the further it goes back in there, the better protected I think it's going to be. Because I think here, we're right on the edge of where it's been taken away by the ploughing.
When we say a Roman mosaic, this is just white with the occasional bit of red in, isn't it? It's not pretty.
Oh, come on, Tony. What do you mean it's not pretty? Look, it's a Roman mosaic. How often do you find a Roman mosaic just like that on day one?
Very, very rarely. Geophysics, who've split into two teams, have a hunch there's also a villa down here by the river. Their first magnetic results told us where to dig. Now, by using resistance, they should be able to pinpoint the walls and the outline of any building that may be here. Our first trench in the upper field has delivered good archaeology, but we can't begin any evaluation work on the scheduled villa until we're sure that we found it.
Rich, where are we?
We're on a Roman wall.
Oh, yeah.
You can see it's completely running off in that direction, and we've got two faces, one running up here and one on this side here. It's measuring about 50 centimetres across. But the problem is, what's going on either side of it? We've got this really dense material here. We've got various things coming out of it, compacted material. Look, we've got here tesserae coming up. And we've also got a few bits of this grey-ware Roman pottery.
Oh, look, even licenses beer bottle.
I don't think that's Roman.
By the end of our first day, we found more archaeology than we often see in 3 days. There's even a second mosaic up the other end of Phil's trench. The problem, as always, is understanding what's going on.
What we've actually got at this end of the trench, I think we're outside the building, and you can see we've got the collapsed roof which has come sliding down out here. Here's the main back wall or front wall of the building. This we now know is a corridor going through, so your straight edge becomes part of the next wall which has been robbed out. And now inside here we've got the main rooms of the building with a collapsed mosaic.
Where's the mosaic, Matt?
We've got one piece there, that bit there, and that long piece going across there.
So it's quite extensive, isn't it? So what are we going to do here tomorrow?
Well, we've got John's new geophysics. This has got the resistance on it, hasn't it?
Yeah, and I think what's exciting about the results is when we'd only got the magnetic, we thought we might have just a simple, maybe 3-roomed villa. Now we've got the resistance. It clearly shows that the rooms extend in this direction. It's much bigger and more complex than we thought.
So we're going to do a bit more with this area tomorrow and then target a trench somewhere in the middle there, probably a 10 by 10, something like that.
What about our villa up there?
Well, the big news, Tony, is we've actually found License's villa, but the problem is we don't actually know where we are in it. So we're going to get a trench across it tomorrow. Let's work out where we are on his plan.
The Romans were renowned for their water engineering. It seems odd to go to such trouble to bring fresh running water down to these buildings from a spring further up the valley when the river was so close. In the lower field, our Roman experts might have the answer. They've been looking at the finds from this trench and they're now convinced that the building was a bathhouse. A basic Roman bathhouse had 3 rooms: a warm room, a hot room to sweat out your dirt, and a cold plunge pool to cool off. They think we're digging in the hot room.
Oh, come on, how can you tell that from one trench?
Because it's got distinctive types of tile, including this one, which is a voussoir, which is one of the box tiles forming the vault in the ceiling.
So you literally get a tube of boxes going around the vault.
allowing the hot air to circulate up the walls and around the ceiling.
So this sort of odd shape is deliberate?
Oh, yes.
That is incredible. So that's it?
And we've even got a bit of the vault. This is a tufa, nice light limestone, so you can get the whole of the stone vault, but half the weight. So you get a really good stone vault instead of a wooden roof, which would rot in a hot, steamy room.
So is this the vaulted sort of roof that has caused our mosaic to collapse in?
Highly likely, yeah.
And presumably it all belongs to the 4th century. That's what the coins are saying anyway.
That does it. Because I've got a piece of box tile here from a wall box tile, which has roller stamp decoration and is almost certainly 1st or 2nd century. implying, therefore, that we may have an earlier bathhouse on the site.
So this decoration is literally put on with a roller.
Correct.
You get the piece of clay and you
As
you
opposed
imprint.
to a comb decoration, freehand comb decoration.
Hey, this is really good, isn't it? Really, because it looks as though we've got not one bathhouse, but two bathhouses.
Yes.
I need to get my head round this. David and Richard are saying that we've got two phases of bathhouse here 300 years apart. And as this might be a hot room, could there possibly be a hypercaust, an underfloor heating system, right here under the rubble?
This is all made up ground.
Loose stone.
I think what they've done is they've dug a slot into the side of the hill to take the stone away.
Yep.
And that's what John was seeing on the geophysics. The thing of it is, it's not all doom and gloom, because we do actually have some preserved Roman archaeology in here.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, we've got tassery in there, look.
Got it.
And animal bone. So I think what's happened is that literally this quarry has chopped away all the Roman archaeology.
Last night we wanted to close down the lower field. We've solved Roger's molehill mystery. We're convinced it's a Roman bathhouse, complete with collapsed mosaic floors. Now we can see how the rooms of the Roman bathhouse related to each other in this lower field. Next door to the plunge pool, Matt's beginning to uncover what we suspected all along.
David, come over here a minute.
There was a hypercaust here, an underfloor heating system. So this must be the hot room.
An in situ bit of the bathhouse. If you just pop down there. Look at this.
Oh, definitely. That's there, the peelie for the floor.
This stack here still in situ.
Stacks of tiles called peelie supported the mosaic floor, allowing hot air to circulate underneath and through flues in the walls.
We've got, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 at
Five,
least?
yeah, and they're still
Six
going down
stacks
as well.
At least?
Yep, getting down there, and there's rubble and stuff.
No sign of the floor yet?
Well, we've got bits of this
That's the
collapsed floor,
that's
yeah.
the collapsed floor. And we've got a bit of voussoir here.
Yep, but the bottom of this, I can't see how far down it is actually going. Bits of tessera coming out all over the place.
You may find another stack somewhere
Oh,
here.
right, so close.
Yeah, well, they're sometimes separated by roughly 30 centimetres. That's good.
Lovely.
Good. Thanks.
At last it's coming good in the upper field. After all the hours of geophys and collective head scratching, they've stumbled on the remains of a mosaic, and alongside is the decisive clue. A mosaic has been lifted from here. And who else would have done that other than our old friend Samuel Lysons?
This is the mosaic.
You mean this is this?
That's right. The problem we've had for 2 days is that we've been chasing Lysons. Was his rooms running in this direction, or were they going in that direction?
So where would the Orpheus mosaic have been?
That would have been under the grass at the far end of the trench in that direction.
Well, it's been a struggle.
Yes.
Thank goodness I was able to chivvy you on, otherwise we might never have worked it out.
It's all down to you.
It's disappointing that we didn't find more of the Lysons villa that we assumed would be easy to locate. The quality of these mosaics alone tells us that this was an impressive 4th century villa, occupied most probably by wealthy yeoman farmers, the early ancestors of England's medieval knights. Yesterday, back in the lower field, the experts thought that there were 2 bathhouses on the site, one earlier than the other, and today Matt's found the concrete evidence.
We've got this huge chunk of opus signinum concrete, but as you can see, it's got this lovely kind of curve on it. Do you know which part of the...
Oh, yeah, so I know exactly what this is. This is the first floor for this room, and it's part of the same phase as the concrete that you've got on the concrete floor that predates the mosaic.
Right, so this is the earliest
This is the earliest
phase.
And in this phase, I suspect the room was being used very much as part of the bathhouse, for the use of the bathhouse as a hot room, and that when the mosaic was put down, possibly the use of the room had changed somewhat.
That there would have formed the base, the floor of the bath, and here's the edge along there.
That's the quarter round moulding, yes. This has been totally waterproof.
And at the bottom of the bath?
No, this is not in situ. This has been ripped out and just dumped.
But this isn't quite as fancy as a mosaic, though, is it? So it's
Well,
a cheaper version,
it's
is
just
it?
plain. But yes, but it's waterproof, so it's vital.
Yeah.
Undeterred by failing to find a spring head, John's at it again.
Hey.
5:25 and still the geophysics
Worth
comes.
waiting for, though. Look at this. We've got the whole landscape now magnetically. Here's the scheduled villa, a series of prehistoric enclosures surrounding it. Then we've got this avenue that we saw yesterday. Now it appears to connect the two fields with the possible shrine down here. We still don't really know.
Yeah.
And then in this field, sort of bathhouse fields, as we've been calling it, look at the resistance results. There's the stream, Just
Right.
orientate. There's the plunge pool. There's the trench with the mosaic. Look, we've got a whole new range. Corridors, rooms, absolutely fantastic. And basically it extends up the hillside there. And even more exciting, look at the scale. It's actually larger than the scheduled villa up there.
So is it another villa?
It looks like it, doesn't it?
It's got to be.
2,000 years ago, there would have been many more people living in this landscape. Based on our finds, it looks as if a modest range of farm buildings, including a bathhouse, was in use by the river just after the Roman occupation in 43 AD. This settlement grew into a larger and more affluent complex with its own piped running water, but it would have been vulnerable to flooding. So perhaps it was the same family that built the villa that Lysons discovered further up the hill on the site of some other prehistoric farm buildings. This later villa almost eluded us, but no one could have predicted the quality and the significance of the other discoveries we made. We came here because of a handful of tesserae in this field, but we found this amazing bathhouse. Once Romans would have sat among these beautiful mosaics sweating, then they would have sprinted over to Phil's plunge pool to cool off and exchange the gossip of the day. But this being Time Team, in the last few minutes we've been handed this. It's geophys of yet another villa up on this slope here. It's bigger than Lysons' original discovery and part of a huge Roman complex.
Hello, my name's John Gator. Time Team is fan-funded by Patreon. This vital support helps us to make new episodes. Joining Patreon gives you access to exclusive interviews, 3D models and masterclasses, plus lots more.